Hello, my friend. Tonight, our peaceful journey through history brings us to one of the most iconic places of the Middle Ages, a medieval castle. For centuries, these towering fortresses have captured our imagination. Their high stone walls, their mighty towers, their fluttering banners, they appear almost magical, as though they were built for kings, queens, and heroic knights alone. From a distance, a castle looks like the safest place in the kingdom, strong enough to withstand armies, beautiful enough to inspire stories, powerful enough to command respect from every nearby village. But tonight, we're going to discover another side of castle life, not from the throne, not from the banquet table, and not from the saddle of a knight's horse. Instead, we'll see the castle through the eyes of someone history rarely remembers, a servant. Imagine it is the year 1530. The Black Death has changed Europe forever. Many villages are still recovering. Kingdoms compete for power. Stone castles stand proudly across England, France, and much of the continent. Behind every castle wall, hundreds of people work tirelessly to keep life running smoothly. Most of them are not nobles. They are servants, cooks, stable hands, maids, scullions, kitchen boys, laundresses, messengers, firekeepers. Each one begins work before sunrise. Each one finishes long after darkness has fallen. Without them, even the richest lord could not enjoy a single comfortable day. As you approach the castle, its enormous walls rise higher with every step. Gray stone blocks, carefully fitted together by skilled masons decades earlier, form an almost unbroken barrier against the outside world. A deep moat surrounds the fortress. Its calm water reflects the first pale colors of dawn. Ahead, a heavy wooden drawbridge stretches across the moat. Iron chains creak softly as guards prepare to raise it later in the morning. You walk across thick oak planks, worn smooth by thousands of footsteps. Merchants, knights, pilgrims, messengers, and servants like you. Above your head, archers quietly patrol the battlements. Their silhouettes move slowly against the brightening sky. Large banners bearing the Lord's coat of arms flutter in the cool breeze. The castle is already awake. Inside the gatehouse, the smell of burning oak fills the air. Somewhere nearby, a blacksmith has already begun heating his forge. The steady rhythm of hammer striking iron echoes across the courtyard. Horses shuffle quietly inside the stables. A rooster crows beyond the outer walls. Dogs wander between wagons, hoping for scraps of food. The courtyard itself is surprisingly busy. Servants hurry in every direction. Some carry heavy wooden buckets filled with water from the castle well. Others push handcarts loaded with firewood. Several women carry baskets overflowing with fresh vegetables delivered before sunrise. A young boy struggles beneath the weight of a sack of flour nearly half his size. No one appears rushed. Yet everyone moves with purpose. Every minute matters. A castle cannot simply wake itself. Someone must light every fireplace. Someone must prepare every meal. Someone must sweep every hallway. Someone must refill every candle. Someone must wash every dish. And today, that someone is you. Your supervisor, an older servant whose face bears the lines of many difficult years, greets you with a brief nod. There is little time for conversation. Work begins immediately. You are handed a rough linen tunic, a simple leather belt, a pair of worn shoes that have clearly belonged to someone else before you. There are no elegant uniforms, no polished armor, no colorful fabrics. Your clothing is practical, made to withstand dirt, ashes, and endless hours of labor. You quickly discover that a castle is much larger than it appeared from outside. Narrow staircases twist upward through thick stone towers. Long corridors connect kitchens, storage rooms, chapels, guest chambers, and the magnificent Great Hall. Everywhere you look, there is another doorway, another staircase, another task waiting to be completed. Unlike the stories told by traveling musicians, castles are not quiet places. They are busy. Very busy. Hundreds of people may live within these walls during the busiest seasons. Nobles, guards, craftsmen, servants, priests, visiting merchants. Messengers arriving with important news. Every person depends upon someone else's work. The noble depends upon the cook. The cook depends upon the baker. The baker depends upon the miller. The miller depends upon the farmer. And everyone depends upon the servants who keep the castle clean, warm, and organized. As the first sunlight reaches the tallest tower, the chapel bell rings softly across the courtyard. Its familiar sound reminds everyone that another day has begun. For the Lord, today may include meetings, hunting, or welcoming important guests. For the lady of the castle, there may be letters to write, children to teach, or household accounts to review. But for the servants, the day follows a simpler rhythm. Work, more work, and then even more work. There are no days without responsibility, no mornings spent sleeping late. The castle never truly rests. Neither can its servants. Perhaps this is the greatest surprise of all. When we imagine medieval castles, we often picture luxury, golden goblets, lavish banquets, magnificent bedrooms. But very few people inside these walls experience that life. Most lived quietly in the background. Rarely noticed, rarely thanked, yet absolutely essential. Without their hands, the fires would grow cold, the kitchens would fall silent, the halls would gather dust, and the great castle itself would slowly stop functioning. As you stand in the middle of the bustling courtyard, watching dozens of servants begin another ordinary day, you realize something unexpected. This castle is not simply built from stone. It is built every single day through the hard work of ordinary people. And your first day has only just begun. The castle still sleeps. Beyond the thick stone walls, the countryside is wrapped in darkness. A gentle mist drifts across the moat. The stars remain visible above the tallest towers. Only the occasional hoot of an owl breaks the silence of the early morning. For the lord of the castle, the night is not yet over. For the ladies, the children, and the honored guests, sleep continues peacefully. But for the servants, the day has already begun. Long before sunrise, a small handbell rings softly through the servants' quarters. Its sound is quiet, but unmistakable. There are no snooze buttons, no warm electric blankets, no soft mattresses inviting you to stay a little longer. Only duty. You slowly open your eyes. The room is almost completely dark. A single candle flickers near the doorway, casting long shadows across the rough stone walls. You share this room with several other servants. Rows of simple wooden beds stand close together. Each one holds a thin straw mattress, covered by a coarse wool blanket. Privacy is almost unknown. Personal space is a luxury reserved for the nobility. The air is cool. Even during summer, the thick castle walls trap the chill of the night. In winter, the cold becomes far more difficult. Ice sometimes forms along the edges of small windows. Breathing creates tiny clouds in the air. There are no fireplaces here. The warmth belongs upstairs, where the lord and his family sleep. The servants learn to accept the cold. Slowly, everyone rises without complaint. A young kitchen boy rubs the sleep from his eyes. An older maid quietly folds her blanket. A stable hand pulls on worn leather boots, already stained with mud from yesterday's work. No one speaks very much. There is little time. Within moments, the room begins to empty. Each servant knows exactly where they must go. Some hurry toward the kitchens. Others make their way to the stables. A few disappear into narrow corridors carrying candles, ready to wake the castle one room at a time. You step into the hallway. The stone floor feels cold beneath your feet. Oil lamps burn faintly along the walls. The castle is strangely peaceful at this hour. Without crowds, without voices, without music, it feels almost like another world. Your first task is simple: light the fires. Throughout the castle, dozens of fireplaces have gone cold during the night. Without fresh fires, the kitchens cannot prepare breakfast. The great hall remains chilly. The private chambers of the Lord feel damp and uncomfortable. Bundles of dry oak wood have already been stacked nearby. You kneel beside the first hearth. Yesterday's ashes are gently pushed aside. A few glowing embers remain hidden beneath the gray dust. Carefully, you add dry kindling, small twigs, then larger pieces of wood. A gentle breath encourages the tiny flames. Soon, the fireplace crackles quietly. Warmth slowly returns to the room. Then, you move to the next fireplace. And another, and another. By sunrise, dozens must already be burning. Elsewhere, other servants begin carrying water. The castle well stands in the center of the courtyard. Its water is fresh, but heavy. Each wooden bucket weighs far more than it appears. The journey between the well and the kitchen seems endless. Up narrow staircases, through winding corridors, across uneven stone floors, again and again. A single morning may require hundreds of liters of water for cooking, cleaning, washing, bathing, brewing ale. Every drop must be carried by hand. There are no pumps, no pipes, no running taps, only strong arms and steady footsteps. Meanwhile, the kitchen slowly comes to life. Large iron cauldrons are lifted over open fires. The head cook begins organizing the day's meals. Young assistants grind grain into flour. Others knead bread dough beneath the warm glow of candlelight. Fresh onions are chopped, herbs are gathered, porridge simmers gently inside heavy pots. The smell of warm oats, fresh bread, and wood smoke fills the air. It is comforting. But few servants have time to enjoy it. Their own breakfast is simple. Perhaps a piece of coarse bread, a bowl of pottage, and watered ale, safer to drink than untreated water in many places. The meal is eaten quickly. Work is waiting. As dawn slowly approaches, the castle begins to awaken. A chambermaid quietly enters the Lord's private chambers. She carefully opens the shutters. Soft morning light spills into the room. Fresh linens are arranged. The fireplace burns warmly. Everything must appear perfect before the Lord opens his eyes. Elsewhere, another servant polishes silver goblets. A young page arranges chairs in the great hall. The stable master checks every horse before sunrise. Every task, no matter how small, helps prepare the castle for another day. Most guests will never notice these efforts. They will admire the warm fires, the clean floors, the freshly baked bread, the polished tables. They may assume such things simply happen, but behind every comfortable moment stands an unseen servant who woke hours before dawn. Perhaps that is the greatest challenge of this life. Your work is meant to be invisible. When everything goes well, no one notices. Only when something is forgotten does anyone remember your name. As the first golden rays of sunlight rise above the eastern hills, the castle finally comes alive. The chapel bell rings. The gates open. Merchants begin arriving with carts full of vegetables, grain, and barrels of ale. Guards change their watch upon the walls. The Lord prepares for another busy day. For the servants, However, the hardest part of the morning is already behind them. They have been working for hours, and the day is only just beginning. The castle is fully awake now. Sunlight pours gently through narrow windows. The great hall begins to fill with warm golden light. Outside, the courtyard echoes with the sounds of horses, wagon wheels, and distant conversations. Inside, another kind of work quietly begins. It is not glamorous. It is rarely noticed. And yet, without it, life inside the castle would quickly fall into chaos. Cleaning. Every single day, dust settles upon wooden tables. Ashes gather beneath fireplaces. Mud is carried inside by boots. Horses and wagons. Smoke from dozens of fires leaves dark stains upon the stone walls. Nothing stays clean for very long. Unlike modern homes, a medieval castle is an enormous building. Hundreds of rooms, long winding corridors, stone staircases climbing toward tall towers, hidden passageways, storage rooms, guest chambers, kitchens, chapels, guard rooms. Each one requires attention. Every single day, you begin in the Great Hall. This magnificent room is the heart of the castle. It is where feasts are held. Guests are welcomed. Important announcements are made. The Lord receives visiting nobles beneath colorful banners hanging from heavy wooden beams. At first glance, the hall appears magnificent. Long oak tables, beautiful tapestries, iron chandeliers suspended high above, massive fireplaces large enough for a person to stand inside. But yesterday's feast has left its mark. Crumbs cover the wooden floor. Bones lie forgotten beneath benches. Ale has dried into sticky patches. Ashes have drifted from the fireplace overnight. The room no longer looks impressive. Your first tool is surprisingly simple. A broom made from bundles of twigs tied tightly together. There are no vacuum cleaners, no polished wooden handles, only rough branches gathered from nearby forests. Slowly, you begin sweeping. Dust rises gently into the morning sunlight. Tiny particles float through the air like golden mist. The work is repetitive, back and forth, row after row, every corner, every bench, every doorway. Hours pass quietly. By the time one side of the hall is finished, the other already seems dusty again. Stone floors present another challenge. Unlike smooth modern tiles, medieval stone is uneven. Small cracks collect dirt. Mud becomes trapped between worn edges. Cleaning requires more than sweeping. Buckets of water are carried from the well. Wooden brushes scrub stubborn stains by hand. Sometimes sand is scattered across the floor before sweeping. The rough grains help lift grease and dirt from the stone. It is slow work, but surprisingly effective. Nearby, another servant carefully beats large woven rugs outside in the courtyard. Each strike sends clouds of dust drifting into the cool morning air. Sunlight catches every tiny particle. For a brief moment, the dust sparkles almost beautifully. Then the breeze carries it away. Inside the castle, the fireplaces demand constant attention. Ashes must be removed before fresh wood is added. Heavy iron shovels scrape gray piles into waiting buckets. Some ashes are scattered in the gardens. Others are saved for making simple cleaning mixtures. Nothing is wasted. Even yesterday's fire continues to serve a purpose. As you continue through the castle, you notice how quickly the corridors become dirty. Servants hurry constantly between rooms. Messengers rush to deliver important news. Guards patrol the walls. Dogs wander freely. Children of noble families play games beneath stone archways. Every footstep leaves another trace behind, another patch of mud, another dusty footprint. Keeping the castle clean feels almost impossible. Yet the work never stops. In the private chambers, the tasks become even more delicate. Beds must be carefully remade, fresh straw added to mattresses when needed, blankets shaken free of dust, curtains adjusted to welcome fresh air, simple wooden furniture polished with cloth and beeswax. The room must feel comfortable, even if true luxury remains rare by modern standards. The windows present another challenge. Most are small. Many contain delicate pieces of colored glass held together with strips of lead. Cleaning them requires patience. A careless hand could damage glass that took skilled craftsmen weeks to create. Nearby, a young servant carries a basket filled with fresh rushes. Instead of carpets, many castle floors are covered with dried reeds or rushes. These help absorb moisture, provide warmth, and soften footsteps. Over time, they become dirty. Bits of food, mud, animal hair, even insects gather among them. Every few weeks, the old rushes are removed. Fresh ones are carefully spread across the floors. The castle immediately feels cleaner and smells pleasantly of fresh grass. One of the least pleasant jobs belongs to the youngest servants. Emptying the chamber pots. Not every room has access to a garderobe, the castle's built-in toilet. Many bedrooms rely upon simple pots placed beneath wooden chairs. Each morning, someone must carry them away. The task is unpleasant. The smell lingers. Yet it is essential for the health of everyone living inside the castle. History often remembers grand banquets, magnificent armor, and noble celebrations. It rarely remembers the quiet servant carrying a heavy bucket through narrow corridors before sunrise. And yet, without that servant, castle life would become unbearable. As afternoon approaches, the great hall finally shines once more. The long tables are spotless. Fresh candles stand ready for the evening meal. The fireplaces glow warmly. The banners hang proudly overhead. Visitors entering the room will admire its beauty. Few will wonder how many hours of work made that beauty possible. Perhaps that is the quiet nature of service. When everything is clean, orderly, and welcoming, the work becomes invisible. The greatest compliment a servant can receive is often no compliment at all, because when no one notices the cleaning, it means the job has been done perfectly. The broom rests quietly against the stone wall. Your hands ache. Your back feels stiff. Dust clings to your clothes. Yet another part of the castle is ready for the day ahead. Tomorrow morning, the dust will return. The ashes will gather once more. Footprints will appear again. And the endless cycle will quietly begin all over again. The afternoon sun climbs higher above the castle towers. Outside, the courtyard grows busier with every passing hour. Merchants arrive through the great gate, carrying barrels of ale, sacks of flour, fresh vegetables, and baskets overflowing with eggs. Inside the castle, the busiest room of all has already been awake for hours. The kitchens. Unlike the elegant Great Hall, a few nobles spend much time here. The air is far too warm. The floors are often wet. The noise never seems to stop. Yet without these kitchens, the castle itself could not survive. As you step through the heavy oak doorway, a wave of warmth immediately surrounds you. Several enormous fireplaces burn continuously. Iron cauldrons hang above glowing fires. Their contents bubble gently, sending clouds of fragrant steam into the room. The smell is unforgettable. Fresh bread, roasting meat, onions, garlic, herbs, wood smoke. Everything blends together into the unmistakable scent of a medieval feast. At first glance, the kitchen appears almost chaotic. Servants move quickly between wooden tables. One chops vegetables. Another kneads heavy bread dough. Several young boys carry buckets of water from the well. The head cook stands calmly in the center, watching everything. He rarely raises his voice. He doesn't need to. Every servant already knows their duty. Each movement follows a rhythm practiced hundreds of times before. A castle kitchen never truly rests. Breakfast has only recently finished, yet preparations for the evening meal are already well underway. Unlike a small village home, this kitchen must feed not only the Lord and his family, but guards, servants, visiting merchants, traveling priests, craftsmen, and sometimes hundreds of guests during special celebrations. On feast days, more than 200 people might gather inside the Great Hall. Imagine preparing dinner without electricity, without refrigerators, without modern ovens. Everything depends upon fire. Wood must be chopped, carried inside, stacked carefully beside the hearth. The flames require constant attention. Too little heat, and the bread remains uncooked. Too much, and precious food is ruined. One servant spends nearly the entire day feeding logs into the fireplaces. His face glistens with sweat. Ash clings to his clothing. His hands have grown rough after years beside the flames. Few people notice him, yet every meal depends upon his work. Nearby, a baker carefully shapes round loaves of bread. His hands move confidently. Years of experience guide every motion. The dough is placed inside a large stone oven already glowing with stored heat. Soon, the smell of freshly baked bread fills the kitchen. Warm, comforting, almost impossible to resist. Bread forms the foundation of nearly every meal. Rich or poor, everyone eats bread. The difference lies in the quality. The Lord enjoys fine white bread made from carefully sifted wheat flour. Servants usually receive darker loaves made from barley or rye. Simple, filling, practical. At another table, two servants quietly peel onions. Tears roll down their cheeks, not from sadness, but from the sharp scent rising into the air. Nearby, carrots, turnips, leeks, and cabbages are chopped into large wooden bowls. Most meals begin with vegetables, not because they are fashionable, but because they are available. They grow well, they store through winter, and they feed many hungry people at once. One enormous iron cauldron holds thick pottage, a hearty mixture of grains, vegetables, herbs, and occasionally small pieces of meat. It simmers gently for hours. Every servant knows its comforting smell. For many workers, this humble meal provides enough strength to continue until nightfall. Meat appears more often on the Lord's table than on the servants. Venison from recent hunts, roasted chickens, pork, sometimes beef. These precious dishes require careful preparation. The head cook inspects every tray personally before it leaves the kitchen. Presentation matters. The Lord expects excellence. A single mistake can embarrass the entire household. As the afternoon continues, the pace quickens. Fresh herbs are gathered from the castle garden. Parsley, sage, rosemary, thyme. Their fragrance fills the room as they are chopped and added to simmering dishes. Several servants carry heavy platters across the kitchen. Others polish wooden bowls, silver goblets, and serving knives until they shine beneath the firelight. Every item must be ready before the evening bell. In one corner, a young kitchen boy carefully turns a large roasting spit. Hour after hour, he slowly rotates the heavy iron rod above glowing coals. Too quickly, the meat cooks unevenly. Too slowly, one side burns. His work seems simple, yet it demands constant attention. He cannot simply walk away. The fire never waits. Water remains another constant challenge. Buckets arrive endlessly from the castle well, for cooking, for washing vegetables, for cleaning tables, for scrubbing pots blackened by soot. There are no sinks, no running water. Everything arrives one bucket at a time, and every empty bucket must be carried back again. As sunset approaches, the kitchen reaches its busiest moment. Large wooden trays line the preparation tables. Fresh bread is stacked neatly. Steaming bowls of pottage are ready. Roasted meats glisten beneath warm firelight. Pitchers of ale stand waiting. The smell drifting into the corridors is almost irresistible. Servants gather quietly beside the doorway. Each receives careful instructions. One carries bread, another carries wine. Several lift enormous platters together. Everything must arrive in perfect order. The Lord's table first, the honored guests next, then everyone else. Precision matters, not only for tradition, but for respect. As the doors leading toward the great hall slowly open, music begins to echo faintly from within. Guests are taking their seats. Candles flicker across polished tables. The evening feast is about to begin. The servants disappear quietly into the background, moving almost unnoticed among nobles dressed in velvet and silk. Few guests stop to think about the countless hours of preparation hidden behind every delicious meal. The warm bread, the perfectly roasted meat, the polished silver, the glowing candles, the spotless tables. Each one exists because dozens of ordinary people have worked tirelessly since before sunrise. Perhaps that is the true secret of every medieval castle. Behind every grand banquet stood an army of unseen hands. Hands that chopped, carried, cooked, cleaned, and quietly made luxury possible. As the last tray leaves the kitchen, the fires continue burning. Tomorrow, before dawn, the entire process will begin again. The sun has begun its slow descent toward the western hills. Warm golden light shines through the tall windows of the great hall. Hundreds of candles flicker gently against ancient stone walls. The enormous fireplace burns brightly. Its dancing flames fill the room with warmth and a soft orange glow. The evening feast is about to begin. Outside the hall, the servants gather quietly. Each knows exactly where to stand. Each knows exactly when to move. There is no confusion, no shouting, only calm preparation. Serving a medieval banquet was far more than simply carrying food. It was a carefully rehearsed performance. Every movement mattered. Every gesture reflected the honor of the castle. One careless mistake could embarrass the Lord in front of important guests. And that was something no servant wished to experience. The heavy wooden doors slowly swing open. One by one, the guests enter. A visiting knight removes his riding gloves. A wealthy merchant bows respectfully. Several noble ladies glide across the floor in long, flowing gowns. Their dresses whisper softly across the polished, rush-covered floor. At the far end of the hall, upon a raised platform, stands the high table. This is where the Lord, his family, and honored guests will dine. The higher your place at the table, the greater your importance. Even during dinner, the hierarchy of medieval society remains perfectly visible. The servants remain almost invisible. That is precisely how they are expected to be. Your first task is pouring wine. The silver pitcher feels surprisingly heavy. You approach the high table carefully. Your eyes remain lowered. You speak only when spoken to. With slow, steady hands, you fill each goblet. Not too much, not too little. A single drop spilled upon an expensive gown could ruin the evening. Nearby, another servant carefully presents fresh bread, still warm from the castle ovens. The smell fills the hall. The Lord tears away a small piece before passing the loaf along the table. The meal has begun. Course after course arrives from the busy kitchens. Roasted chicken, venison, fresh river fish, vegetable pies, cheese, fruit, bowls of thick pottage. Every dish travels from the kitchen to the great hall, carried by servants moving in perfect rhythm. One enters, another leaves. The flow never stops. Between each course, the servants quietly remove wooden plates, replace drinking cups, and clear away scraps. The work is constant. Few guests notice, and that is exactly the goal. A perfect servant is almost invisible. The musicians begin to play. Soft melodies from harps, flutes, and small stringed instruments drift through the hall. The conversations grow louder. Laughter echoes beneath the high wooden ceiling. The lord discusses politics with neighboring nobles. Merchants negotiate future trade. Knights share stories of recent tournaments. The servants hear everything, yet they are expected to remember almost nothing. Discretion is one of their greatest responsibilities. What happens inside the Great Hall remains inside the Great Hall. Occasionally, a guest raises an empty goblet. Without a word, a nearby servant steps forward. The wine is refilled. The servant quietly steps away once again. Every movement appears effortless, but appearances can be deceiving. Many servants have been working since before dawn. Their feet ache. Their shoulders burn. Their hands feel tired from carrying heavy trays. Yet no one may show exhaustion. The feast continues. Hours pass. The candles burn lower. The fire crackles softly. Still, the servants remain alert. One young page accidentally stumbles while carrying a platter of roasted meat. For one terrifying moment, everyone nearby freezes. Fortunately, he regains his balance. The food is saved. The disaster is avoided. His heart races. He quietly continues walking, pretending nothing happened. Small mistakes are quickly forgiven. Large mistakes sometimes are not. In some castles, careless servants lost wages. Others received harsh scoldings. Occasionally, those responsible for serious accidents could even lose their position entirely. The pressure to perform well was constant. As the evening reaches its height, a magnificent roasted peacock is carried into the hall. Its colorful feathers have been carefully reattached after cooking. The display is meant to impress the guests. In medieval banquets, appearance often mattered just as much as flavor. The guests admire the spectacle. The servants quietly admire something else: the remarkable teamwork required to make such a feast possible. Behind every impressive dish stood dozens of workers: cooks, bakers, butchers, kitchen boys, scullery maids, fire keepers, water carriers, and servants carrying every plate from one room to another. No single person could prepare a banquet alone. As the final course is served, the mood inside the hall begins to soften. Some guests remain deep in conversation. Others quietly enjoy fruit, nuts, and warm spiced wine. Musicians continue their gentle melodies. Outside, the stars begin appearing above the castle towers. The feast slowly comes to an end. For the nobles, the evening has been filled with comfort. For the servants, it has been another test of endurance. The last guest finally leaves the hall. Silence gradually returns, but the work is not yet finished. Wooden tables are covered with empty cups, bones, breadcrumbs, spilled ale, candles burned nearly to the bottom. The servants quietly begin cleaning once again. Every bench returned to its place, every plate carried back to the kitchen, every goblet polished for tomorrow. The great hall slowly returns to order. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson of castle service. Luxury did not appear by magic. Every warm meal, every shining goblet, every glowing candle, every comfortable evening was built through countless hours of unseen work. Long after the guests had retired for the night, the servants still remained, working quietly beneath flickering candlelight, preparing the castle for another day. The feast has finally come to an end. The laughter inside the great hall slowly fades. The musicians have packed away their instruments. The last candles burn quietly, casting long shadows across empty wooden tables. One by one, the noble guests retire to their private chambers. Warm fireplaces await them, soft feather mattresses, heavy wool blankets. Thick stone walls keep the cold wind outside. For the Lord and his family, the day has ended in comfort. But for the servants, the night is not quite over. The great hall must still be cleaned. The kitchen fires must be made safe. The remaining food carefully stored. Only after every final task is complete, may the servants finally rest. You quietly carry the last stack of wooden bowls back to the kitchen. Your shoulders ache from lifting heavy trays. Your hands feel rough from hours of work. Tiny burns from the fireplace sting gently beneath the dust covering your skin. It has been a long day, longer than most people today could easily imagine. The castle gradually grows silent. The great gates have been closed for the night. Guards begin their watch along the battlements. Torches flicker beside the stone walls. Beyond the castle, the countryside sleeps peacefully beneath the stars. Now, at last, you begin the walk toward the servants' quarters. Unlike the elegant rooms above, these sleeping areas are hidden deep within the castle, sometimes near the kitchens, sometimes beneath staircases, sometimes inside narrow attic spaces beneath the roof. Comfort is not the priority. Practicality is. The room is small, far smaller than the great hall where the nobles enjoyed their evening feast. Several wooden beds stand side by side. Some servants do not even have individual beds. Instead, they share sleeping space with family members, or rotate according to work schedules. Your mattress is little more than a cloth sack filled with straw. The straw rustles softly as you sit down. It is uneven, lumpy, and much thinner than a modern mattress. Fresh straw is valuable. Over time, it becomes flattened, dusty, sometimes damp. Occasionally, it must simply be replaced. A rough wool blanket waits folded at the foot of the bed. It provides some warmth, but during winter, it is rarely enough. Stone castles may appear impressive from the outside, yet they are surprisingly cold places to live. The thick walls keep out invading armies. They also trap the chill of winter. Even in the servants' quarters, your breath may become visible on the coldest nights. There are no radiators, no heated floors, no electric blankets. Only layers of clothing, shared body warmth, and hope that tomorrow brings milder weather. A single candle burns near the doorway. Its flame dances gently whenever a draft slips beneath the old wooden door. The light is soft, barely enough to illuminate the room. One by one, the other servants quietly arrive. A kitchen maid rubs her tired hands. A stable boy removes his muddy boots. An elderly servant carefully stretches his aching back before lying down. Few people speak. Everyone is simply too tired. The room carries familiar smells. Smoke from the kitchen fires. Fresh straw. Damp wool. Leather boots drying near the wall. Perhaps a faint scent of lavender tucked inside someone's blanket. A small comfort after a demanding day. Outside, rain begins tapping softly against the narrow windows. The sound is gentle, almost soothing. For a moment, it feels peaceful. But sleep inside a medieval castle is not always uninterrupted. The straw mattress is rarely comfortable. Tiny insects sometimes hide within the bedding. Fleas are common. Occasionally, mice scurry quietly along the walls searching for crumbs left behind after supper. Cats help keep their numbers low. But they can never remove every unwanted visitor. The castle itself is alive, even during the night. Somewhere above, a guard walks slowly along the walls. His boots echo faintly across the stone. In the stables, horses shift gently in their stalls. A dog barks somewhere beyond the gatehouse. The wind whistles through narrow arrow slits built into the ancient towers. The castle never becomes completely silent. Yet despite these sounds, Exhaustion soon takes over. Within minutes, most servants are asleep, not because the beds are comfortable, but because their bodies have no energy left to remain awake. Tomorrow, the bell will ring before dawn. The fireplaces will need lighting. Water must be carried. Bread must be baked. The great hall prepared once again. Every day follows the same familiar rhythm. There are no weekends, no holidays from responsibility. Only the changing of the seasons offers small differences. Summer brings long hours beneath the hot sun. Winter demands endless fires and frozen mornings. Spring fills the castle with new visitors. Autumn brings harvest celebrations and crowded banquets. But regardless of the season, the servants continue. Quietly, faithfully, almost unnoticed. Perhaps that is what surprises us most. When we imagine life inside a medieval castle, our thoughts naturally drift toward kings, queens, and brave knights. Yet the majority of people living behind these walls experience something entirely different. Hard work, simple meals, modest sleeping quarters, long days, short nights, and very few comforts. Still, many servants remained with the same household for years, some even for their entire lives. Friendships formed, families grew, children learned the same duties as their parents. The castle became more than a workplace. It became home. Not a luxurious home, but a familiar one. As your candle burns lower, the room grows darker. The sounds of quiet breathing fill the air. Outside, the moon rises above the castle towers. Its silver light reflects softly across the still waters of the moat. For a few precious hours, the servants finally rest. Their hands, so busy throughout the day, are now still. Their tired feet, at last, have stopped walking. Tomorrow, before the first hint of dawn, the cycle will begin again. The first light of morning has not yet reached the castle towers. The courtyard remains quiet. A cool mist drifts slowly across the drawbridge. High above, guards continue their silent watch along the battlements. Inside the castle, the servants are already awake once again. Another day begins. Another long list of duties waits ahead. Yet beyond the endless work, there is something every servant must remember. The rules. Some are written, many are not, but every servant knows them, because ignoring even a small custom could lead to embarrassment, punishment, or dismissal. Life inside a medieval castle was built upon hierarchy. Everyone knew exactly where they belonged. At the very top stood the king, if he happened to visit. Below him, the lord of the castle. Then his family, important nobles, knights, priests, officials, craftsmen, and finally, the servants who quietly kept everything running. This order shaped every part of daily life. Where you stood, where you sat, who spoke first, even which door you were allowed to use. Imagine entering the great hall. The long tables stretch across the room. The high table stands proudly upon a raised platform. Every chair has its place. Every guest has an assigned position. A servant would never sit there. Not even for a moment. The high table was more than furniture. It was a symbol of authority. Respecting that space meant respecting the entire order of the castle. Conversation followed similar rules. Servants were expected to speak politely, briefly, only when necessary. Many noble households valued quiet efficiency. A servant who interrupted important discussions or spoke too freely might quickly earn a poor reputation. Listening became far more valuable than talking. Over time, experienced servants developed a remarkable skill. They could anticipate what someone needed. Before a single word was spoken, a raised hand, an empty goblet, a glance toward the fireplace. These small signals were often enough. The best servants seemed almost invisible. Always nearby, always prepared, never intrusive. Clothing also reflected status. The lord wore fine wool, velvet, silk, and richly embroidered garments. Jewelry shimmered beneath candlelight. Bright colors displayed wealth. Servants dressed very differently. Simple wool tunics, plain leather belts, sturdy shoes. Nothing extravagant. Their clothing was designed for work, not admiration. Even colors could sometimes indicate a person's role within the household. Blue for one department, brown for another. Though practices varied from castle to castle, meals revealed the castle's social order perhaps more clearly than anything else. The lord dined first, honored guests beside him. Knights and officials followed. Servants usually waited until everyone else had finished. Only then could they gather in their own dining area. Their meal was simpler. But after a day of hard labor, even coarse bread and warm pottage tasted satisfying. One fascinating custom involved the ringing of bells. Different bells carried different meanings. One announced prayer. Another signaled the beginning of meals. Another warned of approaching visitors. And one, everyone hoped never to hear, rang in times of danger, fire, attack, or emergency. Without clocks, the sound of bells organized the entire rhythm of castle life. Perhaps one of the most important expectations placed upon servants was loyalty. Many noble families employed the same households for generations. Parents taught their children the duties of service. Children eventually worked beside brothers, sisters, and cousins. Trust became one of the greatest treasures inside the castle. A loyal servant might receive greater responsibilities over time, perhaps becoming head cook, housekeeper, or steward. These positions carried significant respect, not because they were wealthy, but because the Lord trusted them completely. Of course, mistakes still happened. A spilled cup of wine, a forgotten candle, an unlocked gate. Most errors were forgiven if they remained small. Others carried more serious consequences. Castle kitchens were especially careful about food. A meal prepared incorrectly could make important guests ill. A neglected fireplace might allow dangerous smoke to fill a room. A forgotten torch could even start a devastating fire. Responsibility rested upon every servant's shoulders. Fortunately, castle life was not entirely serious. Festivals brought moments of celebration. Musicians filled the great hall with cheerful melodies. Jesters entertained both nobles and servants alike. During Christmas or harvest festivals, the atmosphere became noticeably lighter. Extra food appeared. Warm drinks were shared. Laughter echoed beneath the great wooden beams. For a brief time, the rigid structure of daily life softened. Even the busiest servants found small moments to smile. As evening approaches once again, the familiar rhythm returns. The fires are prepared. The tables are arranged. The corridors grow quiet. The castle settles into another peaceful night. Looking around, it becomes clear that every rule, every custom, every tradition exists for one simple reason: to keep hundreds of people living together, working together, and depending upon one another. Without order, even the grandest castle could quickly descend into confusion. Perhaps that is why medieval castles lasted for centuries, not only because their walls were built from stone, but because the people inside followed a rhythm that everyone understood. From the highest lord to the youngest servant, every person had a place, every person had a purpose, and every day, that quiet order began all over again. The castle has finally grown quiet. The last candle flickers gently inside the great hall. The great feast is over. The musicians have long since packed away their instruments. Outside, the drawbridge rests silently above the dark waters of the moat. Moonlight bathes the towering walls in silver. The castle seems peaceful now, almost timeless. If someone were to see it from a distant hillside, they might imagine a place of endless comfort, a home filled with luxury, warm fires, rich banquets, beautiful chambers. But after spending 1 week behind these ancient walls, you know a very different story. The comfort enjoyed by a few was built upon the quiet labor of many. Every loaf of bread placed upon the Lord's table had first passed through the hands of farmers, millers, bakers, and kitchen servants. Every glowing fireplace required someone to gather wood, carry it inside, and tend the flames before sunrise. Every polished goblet, every freshly made bed, every clean corridor, every lit candle existed because someone worked quietly in the background, someone whose name history rarely recorded. As our journey comes to an end, one question gently returns. Would you really survive 1 week as a medieval castle servant? At first, it may sound possible. You might imagine simple work, a quiet castle, a predictable routine, perhaps even a peaceful life. Yet after walking these stone corridors together, the answer feels less certain. The day begins before the sun. It ends long after darkness falls. Heavy buckets of water must be carried countless times. Fireplaces demand constant attention. Meals for hundreds must be prepared without modern kitchens. Stone floors require endless sweeping. Guests must be served flawlessly. Mistakes cannot always be hidden. And tomorrow, the same routine begins again. There are no weekends, no paid holidays, no comfortable retirement waiting at the end of decades of service. Only another sunrise, another bell, another bell, another bell, another bell. Perhaps the greatest challenge is not the physical labor itself. It is the invisibility. The finest servants were rarely praised. When every meal arrived on time, no one applauded. When the great hall looked spotless, few noticed. When warm fires greeted the Lord each morning, they were simply expected. The better a servant performed, the less attention they often received. It was a life built upon quiet dedication. And yet, there was dignity in that work. Servants were not simply workers. They were the heartbeat of the castle. Without them, the kitchens would fall silent. The stables would empty. The great hall would gather dust. The noble household would slowly grind to a halt. Even the most powerful lord depended upon people whose names were rarely written into history books. Perhaps that is something worth remembering. History often celebrates kings, queens, victorious generals, famous battles, magnificent castles, but behind every grand achievement stood countless ordinary people, people who baked bread before dawn, lit candles in quiet corridors, repaired wooden doors, washed clothing beside icy streams, prepared simple meals, swept endless floors, and asked for very little in return. As the centuries passed, many castles changed. Some became royal palaces, others were abandoned, some fell into ruin, their towers slowly claimed by ivy and moss. The laughter inside the great hall faded, the fireplaces grew cold. The servants' footsteps disappeared. Today, many of these castles stand as peaceful reminders of another age. Visitors wander through empty halls, looking up at towering ceilings, imagining knights, lords, and queens. Few pause to imagine the servant quietly carrying firewood through these same corridors, or the maid lighting candles one by one, or the kitchen boy turning a roasting spit for hours beside a blazing fire. Yet those ordinary moments were the true rhythm of castle life. Perhaps they are the stories most deserving of being remembered. As midnight approaches, the castle rests beneath a blanket of stars. A cool breeze drifts across the battlements. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls softly into the night. The final candle in the great hall grows smaller. Its gentle flame dances one last time, before quietly fading into darkness. Tomorrow, the castle will awaken once more. The servants will rise before dawn. The fireplaces will burn. The kitchens will fill with the smell of fresh bread. The great hall will welcome another day, and the endless rhythm of medieval life will quietly begin again. Thank you for joining me on this peaceful journey through history. Together, we've walked through bustling medieval villages, worked beside hardworking farmers, stood in the fiery glow of the blacksmith's forge, experienced the peaceful silence of a medieval monastery. And now, we've discovered the hidden lives of the castle servants who kept great fortresses alive. There are still many forgotten stories waiting to be explored. The daily life of a medieval doctor, the routines of a castle guard, the world of a medieval queen, the challenges of surviving a harsh medieval winter, and countless other journeys hidden within the pages of history. But for tonight, our journey has reached its gentle conclusion. The castle sleeps. The stars shine quietly overhead. The wind whispers across the ancient stone walls. Close your eyes, take one slow, peaceful breath, and allow the echoes of medieval history to fade softly into the night. Good night, sleep well, and I'll meet you again on our next peaceful journey through history.